Welcome back to Wealth Mavericks, the podcast where we help doctors unlock the secrets to building generational wealth. And on today's episode, we're talking about dumb doctor deals. Not just what they are, but also how to avoid the common pitfalls that most doctors, dentists, surgeons, anesthesiologists, you name it, if you're a doctor, you tend to fall into this trap. And if you haven't listened to our episode talking about compressed earning years, this is usually the main culprit of why it happens. But today we want to talk specifically about what are they and how to avoid them. And they don't want to feel dumb by asking what would appear to be dumb questions. I promise you, Doc, there are no dumb questions. And someone who would make you feel like you're asking a dumb question is an immediate red flag, and I would not do business with them. You should feel the freedom to ask any question ad nauseum and as many times as you need to understand what's going on.
As a person who's serving your life to help other people be healthy, we want to serve into your life to help you make your dollars work just as hard for you as you're working hard for them. And I would like to clarify too, Joe, that this is not a term we came up with. This is a term that an actual doctor, and we've heard a couple doctors say this term to us. This is why we're using this term. And so we're not calling doctors dumb in that they've made dumb deals. This is doctors telling us actions that they have taken, and they call them dumb doctor deals.
And I'll tell you what, and Aaron, you can attest to this too, because I know you have a lot of conversations with doctors in our process. And I wish I'd kept track of how many times I heard a doctor say, oh yeah, if I hadn't made these investments, I'd be retired already. Mm-hmm. And it's just there again, watch the episode. If you haven't already, watch the episode where we talk about the compressed earning years, but there is a true and legitimate reason why doctors need to accelerate their wealth building years. They really do have to do that. There are very specific reasons why that's the case. But the bottom line is you need collapsed time frame strategies. And sometimes with that, there's greater risk. And so you're asked to take these greater risks. And because you hit this zone where all of a sudden you have a lot of credit available to you because you're a doctor, you have high income typically because you're a doctor, you have the pressure financially because you're a doctor, and you've got family, spouses, children, friends that you feel like you need to impress or you need to do these things. And so your expenses go higher. So then it's this pressure mounts and you feel the need to make these deals to make this happen. And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the doctors that we work with, they are accredited investors just by the fact of their income qualifies them for that. And so you get people in the accredited investor world that will knowingly take advantage of you. So Bob, can you share some of the inside secrets? Like not like the psychology behind it, but like what happens when these doctors get taken advantage of?
Yeah. So I think I do feel like when some of the physicians, the doctors do make decisions, it is because of what you're talking about with the compressed earning years. I think a lot of it too also is keeping up with the colleague Joneses, right? They're in a hospital setting, they're with other successful doctors, and I think it's the same in some other industries where you have high income earners like lawyers and some of the Wall Street. You're always trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. But if you're a particular specialty and you're trying to keep up with the specialty that is going to have like a surgery specialty, and you're not a surgery specialty, you're really going to have a hard time trying to keep up with those stories, those conversations. And I think the reality is that just take a step back. Just take a step back. And what is your goal? It's kind of like some of the previous episodes we talked about in your core values and what you want in your practice. I think the same should be in your wealth accumulation. What do you want to accomplish with your goals? Why are you doctoring? And it's hard-earned dollars. What do you want these dollars to do? And you may not have an answer to that, but that's definitely a great question to ask an advisor. If I were to hand over the investment decisions or the asset decisions or the tax decisions of myself, my practice, what what's your strategy? What are you going to do? What is your focus? And if you are not quite able to understand, because they keep using legalese or they keep using terminology that's in their world, and they're not trying to step into your world, that may be a first clue of what you don't want to do is continue that relationship.
Mhm.
Does that make
So,
sense?
so they're using like unfamiliar language that's hard. And again, some of the, not to say that every investment and every opportunity is going to be super simple and easy to understand, but I think there's an element, and I know Aaron, you and I've been on a lot of conversations with doctors where it's like they sometimes are too smart for their own good, and they don't want to feel dumb by asking what would appear to be dumb questions. I promise you, Doc, there are no dumb questions. And someone who would make you feel like you're asking a dumb question is an immediate red flag, and I would not do business with them.
Right.
You should feel the freedom to ask any question ad nauseum and as many times as you need to understand what's going on. Because, and Bob, I know we've seen this too. It's like where doctors, they just kind of enter these deals, and it was probably because one of their colleagues was like, oh yeah, I've got this opportunity. And it probably sounds too good to be true. It probably is too good to be true. But if you don't understand what's going on, you should be concerned about that. Now, if you're okay just like writing that money off and it's like, hey, this is a flyer and maybe it goes, maybe it doesn't, that's a whole nother story. But I don't want you to feel like you need to have it all together. Aaron, how many conversations have you been on with doctors where they're like, yeah, no, this is not my strength. I don't know what I'm doing with this.
Yeah, I was just telling you guys about that I'm really seeing this recurring theme that had never really occurred to me. But talking to one doctor, and he said, oh yeah, doctors are notoriously bad with money. And then another conversation we were having that, oh yeah, doctors are not good business people. But we've talked about that in previous episodes, where when you, especially you own a practice, you are a business owner, and you didn't necessarily learn that in medical school, but you now need to learn that. And I was just thinking as you were talking, Bob is an expert in tax strategy. Bob isn't going to feel dumb if he goes into a doctor's office and doesn't know the equipment they're using or the procedure they're doing. Like, that's not his specialty. So, you shouldn't feel bad as a doctor that you don't have that money know-how. But you're right, it is very prevalent that another doctor told us that. He said, I know 70-year-old doctors who are still living paycheck to paycheck because they haven't made the right decisions and they were too afraid to ask along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Bob, I'll toot your horn for you because I know you won't do it. When Bob has an opportunity to explain the work that we do, I have seen light bulbs just going on for people. It's like you have a really special way, Bob, and people who've listened to the podcast know this already, but you have a way of explaining very complex things in very understandable ways with the analogies that you use, the illustrations that you use, and then the real world example of it. And I was with one of our doctor clients, and his wife was commenting, like, Bob just made these things that we've never really understand. He just made them come to life. And so I think that that's what your advisors should be doing for you. And I just see so many advisors who do the opposite. And candidly, doctor, you need to understand a lot of your advisors don't even really know the game. They were taught a certain way of doing things, and that's just all they've done. They've never asked the questions either. And so you should feel the freedom and be encouraged to ask the tough questions. Do not be afraid of looking or appearing dumb. This is, I think, where that the genesis of that dumb doctor deal. It's like you're overly smart and you don't want to appear dumb. And so then by not asking those questions, you get taken advantage of and therefore become part of this dumb doctor deal.
I think some of it too is that when in general, when you have people who tend to earn a higher income, we hear this about athletes a lot of times. You hear this about lottery winners, right? People who come into money, all of a sudden in our society, we make this delineation. If you have a lot of money, all of a sudden you're smart. You're successful. You've done something that you've earned these dollars that you should be able to make decisions and just keep compounding. And I was at a conference one time, and this gentleman, he was saying, hey, look, I'm a successful business owner. I've grown a business to well over $350 million a year. But if I were to leave my business and go start another business in an area I have no clue about, would I have the same success as I am now? And he said, it's 50-50. The reason why it's 50-50 is because you can take the same business tools and mindset of being a business owner, hard work ethic, you know, all these wonderful traits that you really can't teach in school, but it may not equate to another industry. And so we see this a lot of times when athletes go broke. Why? Because they think that they can out earn their mistakes. I think doctors feel like they can out earn their mistakes. And we see this in other businesses as well, is that yes, mistakes have a particular financial cost. And yes, you need to earn money to outweigh what you just made that mistake. But it's not because, you know, your normal income doesn't give you the right to just make stupid decisions to lose money.
Right.
Right. And I don't think it's a conscious thing. I very much think it's a subconscious thing, which is part of the problem, which is why you need to have somebody who can come out and be straight and honest with you, tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Right? Because we all have an area of expertise. And when we go to our doctor, do we second guess them? Some people do. Oh, well, I saw online on this but that person's going to do that with everything in their life. They're going to do that. Right. So it's not that particular situation, but I go into a doctor and if he says, oh yeah, you've got this. Okay, great. Well, what do you suggest I do? Well, let's first look at this. Let's run a couple tests. It's going to kind of rule out some other things, and it's going to affirm what I do think, and then we'll come up with a plan to go ahead and attack that and make that better. Great, that's awesome. That's what we do, right? And I there's nothing wrong with that. I just feel like physicians have been put in a position, doctors have been put into a position where they're just put on these pedestals and everyone just walks away and just watches to see what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's willing to help. They're willing to take advantage. Oh, I'll help you off the pedestal, but you owe me this or give me this.
Right.
Right. And so I don't know how else to help in that situation other than doing what we're doing in the sense of, hey, let's dive into you. Let's pour into you as a human being, as a person who's serving your life to help other people be healthy. We want to serve into your life to help you make your dollars work just as hard for you as you're working hard for them.
Right. Well, and I think what they don't need, what a doctor does not need, is another advisor that's disjointed.
Yes.
I think, you know, it's so rare that we run into doctors who have a cohesive team that is working together towards a common strategic plan.
Yeah.
It's like, as you kind of grow up in the business, you get this hodgepodge of advice along the way, and one piece doesn't know what the other piece does. And so then you end up kind of being that central hub, you know, that all these spokes are attached to. And now you're like dealing in an area that you don't have a specific knowledge about. You don't have a vision because you don't even know what the rules of the game are. And then you're trying to run a practice while all you really wanted to be was a doctor. And so what I really think people need is they need a true advisor who is leading a team of people. We happen to do that for our members. Whether you work with us or not, this is a role that you must fill, because again, a lot of the financial services industry looks at you as a target. You're not just a prospect, you are a target. Mm-hmm. And they are looking to get whatever they can from that relationship. And I feel like this is what I hear a lot from the doctors that we work with, is they're just kind of tired of being taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. And that's how you feel. Like you feel like all these people are just what's in it for them. They're not really, like you said, looking to actually help.
Yeah. And because of our nature, what we do, we run into a lot of physicians that have seen a lot of success. And so they have a lot of experience in being taken advantage of. And so we've talked about this earlier today, Joe, about how I feel like we've been put in this position to address the scar tissue that these physicians are dealing with, this PTSD of decisions, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Hey, I totally believe what you guys are saying, meaning us, we really want to do this, but these are the things that have occurred to me. right? And I feel like it's because we come to the table willing and wanting to serve, like they're willing to want to serve their patients. And so there's that connectivity to where they feel like they can be vulnerable and they can start asking the questions that we keep saying in this episode, questions you need to ask, things you need to do.
Right.
And it's because we give them the authority to do so because of the comfort that we allow them to be who they are. And I don't know how else to explain it other than that. I just think there's a unique situation that I believe we're going to be put in that position. Just as a side note, I feel like we're just going to be put in that position more and more, right? Which I think is a blessing.
And dealing with that scar tissue, we always welcome the challenge because we know what we're able to do. And we understand that there's scar tissue. We understand that you've been taken advantage of. And so we always welcome those questions. I'm like, yeah, tackle them head on. I'm like, people ask for references or whatever. I'm like, I've got a list as long as my arm and you can contact all of them. Like the more you dig into who I am and who we are, the more goodness you're going to find. That's not the case with a lot of people. So maybe that's, just because you go by way of referral to somebody doesn't mean that everyone has been treated that way. So I think there's some tenure and longevity in some of these things. Like I'm just thinking of red flags that should pop up when you're like, hey, this is a dumb doctor deal in the making. So again, if you feel stupid asking questions, that's a red flag. If you feel like you can't talk to them about their experience and what they've done, that's a red flag. If you can't, like, there are things that you should be looking out for, and these are just a few of them. By the way, feel free to talk to your other doctor friends about this. I think sometimes you feel like you're the only one. And that lonely position, it's like, and candidly, it's embarrassing when you get taken. You know what I mean? It's like, shame on me for having done this. Ask your colleagues about this. They'll tell you the horror stories and the war stories and like, hey, here's what I would have done differently. Learn from your experiences. Don't just become jaded and scar tissue all over, because then you're going to miss the real opportunities. And so I think that's something, just, it's not like, hey, welcome to the club, like it's a badge of honor, but it's this, you're not alone in this. And the last thing that I'll say about this is when you're looking around at, we'll call it Dr. Jones, right? Keeping up with Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones doesn't have his stuff together either. Like you see all the social media posts and the fancy vacations that they go on. Unless you're in their personal finances, you have no freaking clue what's going in their world. So just because they say or do something doesn't mean you should say or do that thing. Just be aware that, especially in the day and age we live in now with social media and all this stuff, very few people really have their stuff together. When you do find someone who does, ask them to be your mentor. Like, hey, how did you get to where you are? Like, how did this happen? What decisions did you make? They'll probably give you access to their team. You should talk to my team about this, right? So look for those leaders in the industry that you respect, that you actually know have their stuff together. And I would encourage you, think beyond just business, think beyond just being a doctor, spiritual, family, business, financial, and fitness. Those are the categories that you really should be paying attention to, because what does it do to, gain the whole world if you lose your family or to lose your soul? Like what's the purpose of that? Find people that you want to emulate and see if you can, glom onto their team. All right. Well, I know we're trying to save you. We're trying to save you all. So, these dumb doctor deals are a real thing. Again, we didn't coin that term, but it is a real term in the financial services industry. You need to be aware of that. Pay attention to those red flags. We understand with that compressed earning years and the need for a collapsed time frame. We understand that, but don't just start salivating over a deal because you think it's going to be this thing. You've got to ask those questions, pay attention to those red flags, and if they're there, ask questions around that. So we wish you the best. I think anyone who's listening to our podcast knows, like, we try to share everything that we can, but you can also reach out to us. So if you're a doctor and you've got an income exceeding $1 million a year and you're not spending all that money, there are real things that we can do to help you, from mitigating your tax exposure, increasing the company practice, value, and also reducing drama in your workplace. So feel free to reach out to us. Erin, is there a way that they should reach out to you to get in touch?
Yeah, we'll drop it below in the notes, but you can find us on our website. You can find us on LinkedIn. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, and I would say we always start with a process where we'll actually help you uncover how much we think you might be overpaying in federal income tax. And from there, if it's appropriate, we have a discovery process that takes anywhere from 30 days to 3 months, really depending on how quick you are to respond to things. But if it's appropriate, we'll invite you into that discovery process. And after that, we have various levels of membership and things that we can do to help you. Again, our job is to help you move from a place of fear and anxiety around money to a place of peace and power around really building wealth for you as a doctor. So we wish you the best. We're here to help you. We love you, Doc. Like, keep up the work you're doing.